Amazon.com. So we are looking forward to what she's going to talk to us about today. Come on up.
Thank you, Cindy. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. It's a pleasure to be here today. I walked out of the room to get my mic on, came back and saw these 6 chairs here, and thought, finally, I've been trying to clone myself for years, so now as the other 6 Dianes walk in the door, they'll have somewhere to sit, so appreciate that. Again, this is a fabulous opportunity to be here. Take a look at this topic of change management and want to get your wheels turning today. We have a very sophisticated audience, a lot of knowledge in the room, and would like to take a look at how things are changing and how we need to adapt, and to be able to respond to that so that you can walk away maybe having a slightly different idea of approach to change management. So I want to share with you an evolution of change management and talk about why it's time to change the way that organizations manage workplace change. Change management is indeed a timely topic. You take a look at the past couple of years with the corporate downsizing that have occurred because of the economy. There are office spaces that are in buildings all over campuses that are 20% full. Obviously, you have people outside of their workspaces for upwards of 60% of the time. And as organizations are looking at lease renewals, they're looking at this as being a time to significantly change the workplace. Well, if change is managed well, the costs can be reduced with workplace, and they can be reduced significantly. A great thing for the organization, right? We want to reduce costs. But if change is managed really well, you can increase workforce productivity. I'm going to talk a little bit about how my firm, Stegmeier Consulting Group, bridges this gap between the workplace and the workforce. And that's sort of the premise of why we need to take a different approach nowadays. Just to paint a little bit of background, 17 years ago, I set out to change the world. Didn't quite do it, but had some interesting discoveries. At that point in time, I was really frustrated taking a look at the changing work environment. And how many people were in the workplace 17 years ago? I mean, we've got, okay, quite a few. I know there's some people that haven't been there that long. But 17 years ago, organizations were trying to do some really radical things. We want to increase innovation. We want to inspire collaboration. It was predicted 17 years ago that there was going to be a talent shortage. And how were we going to attract and retain the younger generation? How were we going to help educate leaders to mentor the younger generation? How could we do this and guide these new behaviors? Well, you would see a lot of really good workplace designs coming out. They were the right solutions for the individual organization, yet people weren't using the space as it was intended. Let me give you an example. One client in particular wanted to have their workplace featured as a method of attracting college graduates. So in their recruiting brochure, had great pictures of this collaborative workplace. And when the college fairs were there, the prospective client was out there trying to get people to come in and sign up to have a tour of the facility and talk about working there. When an individual, this one in particular, true story, walked through the space, the collaboration zones were empty, the cappuccino machine was collecting dust, and the only sounds of life were the muffles of executives behind the closed door of private offices. The space wasn't being used as intended, as it was invested in. And this individual, this young man who was thinking about working for this organization, said, this place is just here for show. examples like that kept occurring over and over and over again back 17 years ago when they had these struggles of innovation and collaboration and mentoring and all those very lofty goals. Well, we're still struggling with that, aren't we? We hear about innovation, serendipity, the need for people to be together, to collaborate, yet at the same time they need their time alone to do their more thoughtful heads down work. So took a look at what was getting in the way of the appropriate workplace solution to change behaviors in the workplace. So formally, over those 17 years, worked with more than 140 organizations, intentionally wanted to look at different industries, simply because how many times you're speaking to someone about changing behaviors and they say, oh, well, you don't understand, we're in the banking industry. You don't understand, we're in healthcare. Well, the commonality is human behavior. So taking a look at that and trying to disprove that an industry can be so unique that the workplace, the office workplace, couldn't be a driver of change. So without having probably a 17-week course here, I'm just going to hit the highlights, but over a period of years, probably in the first 8 years of the study, began uncovering factors that were getting in the way of employees accepting change over and over and over again, regardless of the industry. So simple things that we know today: communication, right? The culture, technology. Those are things we know, but we began to uncover other areas like compensation. What's that have to do with accepting workplace change? Well, organizations were trying to implement more teamwork, yet people were hoarding information because, gee, we're getting paid differently. Why should I be helping you? Why should I be mentoring you? Long story short, the biggest barrier to changing behavior in the workplace is leadership behavior. Anybody disagree with that? We take a look at the way leaders, especially at the mid-level management area, are really, really struggling with significant workplace change. So I'd like to paint a little picture of what it was like, say, 11 years ago when I started Stegmeier Consulting Group as it related to change management. So if you think about the beginning of a process, organizations knew they'd be coming out with a very different workplace design and thinking, you know what, there's going to be resistance to this. So the question became, don't you think you need change management? Let's wait. We'll wait and see how we do. The workplace strategy was developed. It began being implemented. Lots of resistance to change. How about some change management? Don't you think you need that? Yeah, I think we're beginning to understand we need that, but let's put it off a while. Maybe it'll blow over. All the way to the point of this implementation was the resistance to change was slowing down the implementation, which is actually costing the company money. And all of a sudden, the word from the client organization is, yikes, we need help. So in comes change management consulting with a big box of bandages, because all you're doing is healing the wounds, stopping the bleeding. Well, things have changed. Over the period of years, there's a greater realization of a need for change management. Absolutely. Actual story from two people in a client organization debating whether or not they should formally include change management in their workplace transformation project. The one individual, how hard could this be? It's change management. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. The other individual said, you're right, rockets behave according to the laws of physics. People aren't nearly as predictable. That gets into a discovery that seems to hit home when we describe it to people, talking about the predictability of people. We find in organizations that when we're trying to do things like take managers out of private offices, does anybody hear resistance to that? A little bit of resistance. Have you had cases where they don't resist? There are some that is much more dangerous. Not resisting to change or not doing it vocally is what we call silent sabotage, because we've had numerous instances where someone in facilities or real estate will be saying, okay, we're implementing our pilot project, and saying to the executives that aren't really happy about it to begin with, say, gee, we know you're unhappy, give it a try, and if this doesn't work, we'll go back to the way it was. Well, what did you just invite that person to do? Sabotage. So all that time, that executive is the good corporate citizen. It's like, yep, I believe it, we need to save costs, I'm willing to leave my private office, we'll do whatever it takes. Yet they're undermining it all along the way. So we found this need to be able to be more predictive of what was going to happen, to be able to introduce the organization to what some of these challenges were. And we're finding that the process really has evolved. Or perhaps maybe it's more than an evolution. I think it's a revolution, but things have changed. So in my life today, we'll get a phone call, extreme sense of urgency from an organization, really anywhere over the world, that says, we need help. We need your help. We need to talk to you about managing change. So you get the sense of urgency, you start talking. It's like, our lease is going to be expiring in about 4 years. This is all about managing change. This is all about changing behavior. It's all about preparing our leaders. They haven't developed a workplace strategy. That is down the road. They want to get their workforce prepared because they know it's just not about the workplace change. It's about other organizational goals that are plotted out 5-10 years down the road, that they realize that significant behaviors have to change. So in today's world, we may be working with a client years ahead of the workplace change. It's visible, you can check lease expirations, it's out there, but they start working on the change. They start working on the leaders. They start working on mid-level managers. They start working with the front line to help them be more adaptable to change. The workplace strategy starts coming in. In fact, you take a look at collaboration, often the client says, hey, who really subscribes to this notion of managing change well, and pulling in a collaborator for that. The workplace strategy is developed, it's implemented. All throughout that time, there's a schedule of events and activities and training and resetting of attitudes, so that by the time you ever get to a workplace pilot, people understand. They may not like the change. They may not like the change, but they're going to understand the business case, they're going to be much more adaptable, and these leaders are going to understand that there's such a significant need to change our ways of working. So things are very different. I get the pleasure of meeting with so many exciting people all over the world, and I try to look at if there's one thing that I hear from the C-suite, and that is incrementalism is not an option. Incrementalism is not an option. What do we mean by that? Well, now's not the time to try to change a work environment by taking some level of management out of private offices and then shrinking the size of the other private offices and lowering the panels a bit and maybe throwing in some team areas in beautiful colors. The executives are saying, what are we going to do to radically change the entire organization, including behaviors, including the workplace? So we're starting off with a clean canvas. That's what a lot of the WISE organizations are doing. They're looking at this extremely holistically. So what we're proposing with this radical change of change management is that we really need to be blending the workplace strategy and the workforce strategy to do the two most important things that an organization can do, and that's reducing workplace costs and increasing workforce performance. There's no one on the C-suite that's going to debate that they don't want to do those two things. You can't debate it. We want to reduce costs, we want to increase performance. Obviously there are other goals. But to do that, you take a look at the two parts of the equation. with the workplace cost, the things that you're doing every day in terms of, getting away from the one-to-one ratio of worker to workspace, removing managers from private offices, reducing the energy consumption or consolidating unprofitable facilities. Those are things that companies do pretty darn well. It's the people that get in the way. So by combining this strategy